Hi, this is Micah Mitchell with Madison County Weather Updates and soon to be coming crystal clear weather. I want to talk a little bit about all the mess with the polar vortex because there's a lot of information out there. Everywhere from there's going to be a major stratospheric warming event that's going to split the polar vortex to there's not going to be a warming event and the polar vortex is going to be weak but stay intact, to it's more what I think is going to happen, and that's just going to get disrupted and pushed, and it'll perturb things a little bit, and just the idea of a major winter stretch is just looking less and less all the time. So let's take a look. Here's at 10 millibars. It's up toward the top of the atmosphere, and kind of what I showed you yesterday. We've got the polar vortex up here, spinning at 10 millibars. It's kind of stretched out, but in the core of it, though, is still over here, over your, northern Eurasia. But it is, getting stretched out some at 10 millibars. If you drop down a little bit to 70 millibars, now you've got a couple of different circulations going, and you can kind of see it's being, pushed kind of out of northern Canada. This is a temperature map, by the way. And so, warmth is kind of trying to push from. What happens is warmth will work its way up from the troposphere into the stratosphere. It's warmer down here at the surface than it is up there. And sometimes you build a major surge of warmth that finds a way to move up to the stratosphere and disrupt the polar vortex. And when it happens, a sudden stratospheric warming event is just that. It's sudden. It can happen in a matter of hours, where a heat surge goes from the surface up and warms part of the stratosphere, sometimes 70, 80, 100 degrees in very short period of time, sometimes hours. And that disrupts the polar vortex. Then that all has to work its way back down to the surface. So that's you can kind of see that with this plot from StratObserve. So here's the kind of what we were just looking at. You can see up here at the upper levels the kind of oblongated polar vortex, but you can see right now the column is relatively straight up and down, but there you still get some disruptions down here at the surface because that air is passing over land, it's passing over water, and it kind of changes it. It doesn't stay. And if the vortex is weak like it is now, it can get ragged at the surface and you still get shots of cold air. They're just not, prolonged shots of cold air. So that's right now. Watch what happens here as we go. I just now realized you can see my reflection off of the screen. Hopefully you can see my screen well. So as we move on, you can see what starts to happen if you watch up here at the top. As you can see, there's kind of a hit. Remember, the vortex was standing straight up. There's kind of a hit coming in from down here close to the international date line. And it's just kind of pushing, and it works its way from the bottom to the top and begins to disrupt what's going on up here at the top. And as you move around, now the vortex is leaning pretty hard. This is by January 3rd. But you can see where the location of the core of the vortex up high is not where it is down at the surface. It's because it's weak, and when it takes this hit, it begins to push the column, kind of out of whack. So when you see some of the static maps from above, and the polar vortex is over here, the 10 millibar polar vortex is over here. Well, in this situation, it doesn't, where the top of it is not where the bottom of it is. All this stuff kind of filters its way down, the column. So at any rate, the vortex is weak. It's taken a hit. You can see it's gotten kind of ragged at the top, and then as it goes around, it really gets itself disrupted. But it's not a true split. You can see it's taken this hard hit from here, and it's pushed it over. It's getting more and more ragged here at the bottom. So that makes it more possible for some of these little lobes right here to pass as it's being disturbed. And then we go on around, and now we're up to about January 10th here. You can see a piece of the surface is really, it's, there's potentially a shot of cold air that might sweep across part of the country, in mid-month, with time where I really kind of expect this to be warmer. But if we take this little shot right here, and then this is just a model forecast, this may not be how it plays out. That's always the thing you got to keep in mind with these, is this is a forecast now. The very first shot was now, this is a forecast. And so it may not play out exactly like this, but you can still see where this hit to the vortex was, kind of right up the date line. And keep that in mind. And then as we advance around, what begins to happen, you see the column begins to stand itself back up. And so it's still kind of ragged up here, but you can see it's beginning to try to reorganize itself. And then this is the very end of that forecast. So by this point, it's trying to reorganize itself, but it's still perturbed. And we still have these, you can see a shot out here, a cold shot here into the central U.S., cold shot out here. And so what happens when it takes this hit is, even though it's not a true split that leads to long-lasting cold, it does disturb it, and we'll start seeing more and more quick shots of cold, maybe 2, 3, 4 day shots of cold that'll, and then it becomes, do you get a storm system to time out with that, where you get snow out of it, or do you just get what we've been getting, which is the storm system beats the cold, we get rain ahead of it and a little bit of warmth ahead of it, then the cold comes in behind and we just get cold and no real snow. So that's the thing that we're going to have to watch, but I just kind of wanted you to be able to visualize what's happening with this polar vortex. And I was talking about the international dateline and hit. Let's go back to, this is actual observations. I'm not going to try to explain this whole chart, but the blues are the winds moving one direction. The reds down here, if you look at the very bottom, are winds moving the other direction. These greens right in the middle are weaker winds. They can be a little bit out easterly or westerly. I do find this little shot right here kind of interesting. I'm not sure. That's a ribbon of faster winds. I'm not sure, and it kind of progressed its way from the other side of the globe across, to this side. I'm not sure what that means. I'll have to try to research that some, but what I want you to notice is the winds were strong right here. If you look down at the wind chart at the bottom, I mean, the winds were pretty strong as we were ending the year, but right here in November, right along the date line, you began to see the winds weaken, and now the weak winds as a whole have spread out. So the vortex has been slowing down for a while, and as long as it's slow, it can be disturbed and dislodge some shots of cold. But we need to get sustained wintry cold, and that's going to take a serious disruption of the polar vortex, and usually a split of the polar vortex. That does not appear to be what's going to happen, but again, there is a decent disruption coming, and by all observations. And so I would expect, as we go through January, it's going to be up and down. We're going to get some colder shots. I don't know how frigid we'll get, but we'll get some colder shots. But if this thing doesn't split or really get pushed harder than what it's forecast to, we're just going to, it's just, this winter is going to be a crapshoot. Will we get some systems to time out with the cold? There's this part of me that almost wonders. I think our worst winter here in Anderson for snowfall was back in 1919. I think we only had a little over 5 inches of snow. And man, the way this is all shaping up, this should have been a better winter because we have an east-based QBO that usually leads to better disruption of the polar vortex. And man, there are just so many things that are working against winter the last couple of years. It wouldn't stun me if we end up with 30 inches of snow. It also wouldn't stun me if we end up setting a new record for the least amount of snow. So it's such a crapshoot. I wish I could give you a more solid answer, but there just isn't one. There are just too many. There are just enough pieces to make you think winter could happen, but there are more working against it right now. So I've run this video longer than I wanted to, but I just wanted to kind of explain what we're talking about with this polar vortex. We'll just continue to watch it over the next week or so, see what happens with it, by the time we're hitting into next week, and go from there. In the meantime, this is Micah Mitchell with Madison County Weather Updates and Crystal Clear Weather. Everybody have a great day and have a happy new year.